What's up, guys? It wasn't all that long ago, about this time last year, that the Georgia offensive line was being discussed as one of the, if not maybe the best offensive line in the entire country. The narrative going into 2024 was this might finally be the year. With Tate Ratledge coming back, with Jared Wilson coming in at center position with all his athleticism, with all the returning starters we had up front, this might be the year that Georgia finally wins that Joe Moore Award as the nation's top offensive line, an award that the Dogs probably should have won a couple years prior. That was the narrative. That was the conversation around the Georgia offensive line. I know it seems like that was forever ago because then the 2024 season happened and the Georgia run game fell off the proverbial cliff, finishing 15th out of 16 teams in the SEC, putting up the lowest yards rushing per game in the entire Kirby Smart era, a full 50 yards below where Georgia was running the ball per game in 2020, which was the previous low, and also finished with the lowest yards per rush output of the Kirby Smart era, a full half yard below where the Dogs were in 2020. And all of a sudden, after that fiasco of a 2024 season, at least on the offensive line and from a run game perspective, and the loss of three starters to the NFL draft, here we are in June, and Georgia's offensive line is now almost universally being viewed as a major weakness for Georgia heading into the 2025 season. At the very least, a big question mark for Georgia. But what if it wasn't? What if there was a world where the Georgia offensive line in 2025 is not only going to be fine, but maybe even better than what the Georgia O line was in 2024?
We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
Welcome back to the Glory UGA podcast. Thank you guys so much for being here. If you haven't already and you are a diehard Georgia fan, go ahead, real quick, guys, subscribe to this channel right now. Turn those notifications on. We are going into overdrive, getting you guys, all you diehards, ready for the 2025 season. So make sure to turn those notifications on so you don't miss any of our content. Like the videos, comment. Love to hear from you guys. So thank you in advance for that. All right, let's get into today's show. Today, we are continuing our position unit breakdowns in preparation for the start of fall camp, which, guys, don't look now. We are about 1 month away from the start of fall camp. And I know we're technically like 2 months away from the start of the 2025 season, Georgia's first game. But for me, like when fall camp gets here, as far as I'm concerned, the season is here. I know we're not watching games on Saturday yet, but like we are in season to me in 1 month. So we are doing everything we can, guys. Like we're going hard here over the next month, getting you guys ready, giving you everything you need to know about this team ahead of fall camp. So again, make sure you are fully subscribed and ready to go. But today we are setting our sights on the Georgia offensive line, which, yeah, admittedly, last year, I'm not going to bury my head in the sand. It was a problem, no doubt about it. And it's also an offensive line that, even with the issues we had a year ago, is losing three starters from that unit a year ago, two of which, at the least, I think have a chance to start as rookies in the NFL. Tate Ratledge being drafted in the second round by the Lions. He's got a legit shot. And from what I hear, it sounds like Dylan Fairchild's got a shot in Cincinnati as well. So when you factor in the struggles we had a year ago, and we're losing three of our better offensive linemen off of that unit, four starters, I guess, at the end of last season, when you look at that situation, naturally, most college football observers look at that and say, yeah, that Georgia offensive line is going to be an issue for them in 2025. That is a big weakness. It's a big question mark. And I get it, man. I totally get it. I watched the offensive line a year ago. You guys did too. It's fair. I understand where people are coming from. But at the same time, and I use this word in the truest sense of the word, I'm not trying to insult anybody. That's not what we do in the show. We're lovers. We're not fighters. But it's also that thought, that narrative is also ignorant of the context around the struggles of the Georgia offensive line in 2024. Yeah, again, we struggled. I'm not trying to suggest otherwise. No doubt. I spent the entire offseason going back and rewatching these games time and time and time again. Yeah, we struggled. But there are reasons for that. It wasn't really a talent issue per se. There were reasons that we struggled that hopefully, fingers crossed, we're not going to have to deal with as much this year. So what were those reasons? Well, number one, first and foremost, by far, in my opinion, the biggest issue for the Georgia offensive line a year ago were the injuries. We were just decimated up front. The entire Georgia team, really, for 2 years running. And look, I know we're not the only team that deals with injuries. Everybody deals with injuries. It's a contact sport. I get it. But that doesn't detract from the fact that the Georgia offensive line was banged up in a significant way in 2024. Multiple starters missing multiple games. All right. We had 3 of our 14 games last year, guys, and only 3 of our 14 games did we have the same 5 starters line up next to each other. It's hard to have any sort of cohesiveness when that is the case. And even when guys were in the lineup and you say, oh, yeah, they're healthy, they're playing, they're good to go, they weren't healthy. Like Tate Ratliff goes down week 3 against Kentucky, right? Misses a number of games, some of our biggest games, misses the game against Alabama. That was a big one. Missed the game, the first game against Texas. Obviously, we win that game, still missed that game. And he comes back. But guys, Tate should have come back when he came back. He wasn't ready, but the guy he's a Georgia guy. He was a leader on the team. He wanted to come back and do what he could for the team. And he probably pushed a little too soon. And you could tell when he was out there in the field, guys, he wasn't ready. He wasn't close to 100%. Even a guy like Dylan Fairchild, who didn't miss any games, but Dylan was banged up all year, guys. He was hardly practicing the entire back half of the year at the very least. Jared Wilson missed multiple games. Our guy that started the season, left tackle, got banged up, and he tried to gut it out, earn a screen for a couple of games, and he was in effect because of the injury. And finally, we pulled him off the field. But we were banged up. Again, even when we were healthy, or even when we had guys in the lineup on the field, they weren't fully healthy, and it shows on tape, guys. They just weren't nearly as effective when they were out there because they couldn't operate at the same level they could when they were healthy. Going through the offseason film study, guys, a lot of times I'm sitting there watching the offensive line, some of the run game issues. Because one of my big focuses in my offseason film study this year was what was the issue with the run game? The run game in general. What were our issues? And when you watch them, you really focus on what's going on the offensive line. You left shaking your head sometimes. Like, Tate, what are you doing, man? Dylan, what are you doing, man? And like, you can't hold against them. They're out there fighting, man, doing everything they could for their team, putting on the line for our team, but they just weren't effective because they weren't healthy. So that was the biggest issue for the Georgia offensive line last year, in my opinion. Hopefully, that's not an issue that Georgia will have to deal with, at least not as significantly as we did last year. So that was number one, first and foremost, by a wide margin. Now, number two, the second biggest issue for me, and I was harping on this all last year. So if you've been on the podcast for a long time, this is probably the 1,014th time you've heard me say this. Not the first time, certainly. But we had guards playing tackle for most of the year. On the interior, even when we weren't like fully healthy, we were still solid on the interior. We were fine. Center guard, it was never really a major issue for us. The issues were at tackle, right? Why? Because you have Ernest Green, who we'll get to him in a minute. We'll break down the projected starting lineup going into fall camp. We'll get to him, but let's just go ahead and say I don't think he's a tackle. I think he's much more of a guard. If anything, he's certainly not a left tackle. And he started last year, wasn't really effective, got hurt, was even less effective because he wasn't practicing, gained some weight. His foot speed was ridiculously slow. He had no chance, any kind of speed rusher. That was a major issue for us, right? Then Xavier Truss, God bless him, did a lot of good things for Georgia, did whatever he was asked to do, but that guy's a guard. I think he's much more, can he play tackle? Sure, but he's much more effective as a guard, starting a bunch of games for us at guard previously in his career, but my necessity was forced to play tackle because the guys that we had on the roster that were really the future, like more talented future tackles, they were just too young. They weren't quite ready. So he was the closest thing we had to being ready at the right tackle position. So we had to go ahead and play him there. And that's where we get into the breakdown of the Georgia offensive line heading into 2025, heading into fall camp. Because now I do believe we finally have, at least at left tackle, we have someone ready to play, to start for us, game one, who is a true, legit tackle in Monroe Freeling. Now, I know some of you probably right now are sitting there saying, well, dude, did you watch Monroe Freeling at the end of last year? Yeah, I did. Seen him many times, go back throughout the offseason. And I know he had his fair share of struggles at left tackle. But here's where I go back to the injury situation. Guys, Monroe Freeling was playing with a torn labrum last year, the end of last year, okay? He had labrum surgery in the offseason, missed spring practice, okay? He was banged up, all right? Should have been out there, honestly. Probably should have been out there. But again, grit your teeth, go out there, put on the line for the team because we didn't really have any other options. Ernest Green just wasn't healthy, he wasn't effective when he was out there at left tackle last year. So he did what he could, man. And yeah, I know the Notre Dame game, give the sack right before halftime, changed the game. I know, I saw that. But you also have to remember he wasn't fully healthy. When Monroe is healthy, and it seems like he will be full go to start fall camp, this is a guy that is a true left tackle prospect. Why? Number one, he has the prototypical length for a tackle, certainly at left tackle. He's always had the length. That's one of the things I loved about him coming out of high school. He's also a really good athlete. He's got the foot speed. He's got the footwork to be able to function effectively, much more effectively than what guys who've had the past couple years at left tackle against more of the speed rushers off the edge. So I love the fact that Monroe Freeling will be there from day one. He's a year older, a year more in the system. Now, I know the offseason's labrum surgery, you have trouble working out upper body, but Monroe's biggest issue coming out of high school, like what took him a little bit longer to develop was, first off, he had to get bigger. He always was long and athletic coming out of high school, but he just needed to add weight. He was thin, a little thin coming out of high school, had the frame, but he needed to fill it out, need to get stronger. And he answered that bell his first couple years in college. And I thought he did some good things early last year. Then he gets banged up, and the rest is history. But dealing with the injury during the offseason and having him hopefully looks like full go in fall camp. If it's not right away, it'll be very early in fall camp. I feel much better about left tackle for Georgia in 2025. And if Monroe gets banged up, I mean, God forbid, knock on wood, fingers crossed, all those things, we also have some younger guys behind him who I think are now much more equipped to be ready to help us if we need it. The guys that just weren't ready last year. Bo Hughley is certainly one of those guys. Another big-time guy coming out of high school. Monroe was a fringe five-star guy. So what recruiting service you look at. Bo Hughley was right there, a top 100 caliber guy at 6'7", about 300 pounds. Another guy with good length, good foot speed. And then a guy that I'm fascinated by, Jazar Jackson, the former overtime elite basketball player, like semi-pro basketball player, hadn't played football for like 4 years prior to deciding to come to Georgia at the very last second before fall camp last year. It was like the last edition of our 2025 class. He was never going to be ready to play last year because the guy hadn't played football in 4 years. But you drool over the physical tools that guy brings to the table. It's just a matter of like developing him, getting him ready. At 6'10", 350, and with basketball footwork and athleticism, you don't see offensive line prospects like that. The dude's a freak. He's a unicorn. And I will tell you guys, what I saw from him in the spring at practice and at G-Day, this guy's development has far exceeded my expectations. He was getting legit reps with the number one offense. Now, Monroe was banged up, so he wasn't playing in the spring. But Bo Hughley and Jazar Jackson were both getting reps at various points with the number one offense throughout spring practice. Jazar Jackson's development has been accelerated, guys. I am stunned at where he is right now. And I was hearing that from people I trust around the program throughout last year, but I was like, all right, yeah, I mean, I know it's easy to say that. I need to see this. In the spring, I saw it, and I don't know if he's ready to start right now. He's not. Like, I don't think he's ready to start right now. But if something happens to Monroe, I do feel much better about the options we have behind him that are ready to step in, because these are the guys I was talking about, Bo Hughley, the Jazar Jacksons of the world, maybe even the Jamal Merriweathers of the world. Those guys who just weren't quite ready for Georgia a year ago on the offensive line, maybe a little young and just not quite there in their development, they're much closer to being there now. So God forbid if we have some injuries at the tackle position like we did last year, we won't be in as dire straits as we were. So we're in much better position there at left tackle. Now at right tackle, I got to be careful here because I don't like ripping our guys. I try to be as fair as possible. These guys go out there and they work hard, man. But even though I think we finally have a true left tackle that will start for us this year, Monroe Freeling, it looks like we're still going to have at least one guy that I think is more of a true guard than he is a tackle playing tackle for us this year, and that's Ernest Green. From what we saw in the spring, guys, Ernest Green is going to start for Georgia at right tackle. I don't love it because, again, I think he's more of a guard. I wish we'd move him inside. I think he'd be a really, really good guard. I think he can be a good functional tackle, but maybe a borderline elite offensive guard at 6'4", 320. But if he's going to play tackle, at least he's not playing left tackle, okay? At least he's not protecting the quarterback's blind side. At least he wants to face as many dynamic speed rushers. Of course, teams now, they move guys around. They try to create matchups. So he'll face his fair share, no doubt about it. But if he's going to play tackle, again, I feel much better about him playing right tackle. I will say this about Ernest. Last year, he was banged up. As a redshirt freshman, if you go back to his true freshman year, the guy suffered a debilitating back injury which is really tough to come back from for anybody, especially offensive linemen, right? And that set him back. And he was doing some really good things from what I was hearing coming out of camp, out of practice. As a freshman, you have back surgery and he misses the rest of the year, right? And so that sets back his development, right? So he does get all those developmental reps as the freshman, even if he's on the scout team. You miss out on that developmental year. And then he, based on what our coaches saw and what we had to work with, we tried him out there in 2023 as a redshirt freshman to start at left tackle. And if you go back to 2023, those of y'all been with the podcast for a while, you remember me saying this. I didn't love what I saw from him. It was, I thought it was a tough go, especially early in the year. Now, he did get better as 2023 went on. And so that gave me some encouragement going into 2024. But then right off the bat in 2024, it wasn't there, man. I'm watching him play. I'm like you're slow getting into your sets. You got no chance at the faster, more dynamic speed rushers off the edge. And he gets banged up. He got heavier, gained some weight. His foot speed was even worse. And then he had no chance. And finally, our coaches realized, like, we got to make a move. And you take him off the field. And it's really injury related. But now he's healthy. Okay, he's healthy. And I'll give him this during the spring, the limited amount of time I saw him at practice and at G Day. I thought he looked a lot better. He certainly got his body back in shape. He was moving better than he did really at any point last year. So I question, like, was he banged up to start last year? Like, I don't know that, but based on what I saw from him in the spring this year versus like where he was the start of last year, go back and rewatch like the Clemson game. Now, Alabama game, I don't know, man. Like, I don't think he was ready. He was healthy from the jump last year. I don't know. That's speculation, but I have some thoughts there. But he's moving to right tackle. I'm cautiously optimistic that he will be better. If there is a question I have for the Georgia offensive line, I know a lot of people look at center, which we'll get to in a second. To me, it's right tackle. Can Ernest Green finally start to fulfill that immense potential? This was a top 50 guy nationally out of California coming out of high school, guys. So will he be ready to be that guy? Now, if he's not, right, let's say he struggles again to open the season, which admittedly is a possibility. It's a possibility. You got a guy, I think it's a guard playing tackle. And again, it's the same guys at left tackle that are also crossing at right tackle. Bo Hughley, Jazar Jackson. So if Ernest Green is struggling, and we need to make a move there, I think we're far better equipped to have someone step in and push him and be ready to play at a high level for us if pressing a duty, if we need him. I think Bo Hughley has some really good things this spring. I was very impressed with what I saw from him. That guy's athletic. That guy's got some good length. He's got a lot of talent. Jazar Jackson, again, you heard me break him down. Very excited there. So I think we're going to be okay at right tackle. Will we be better at right tackle than we were a year ago? I think the depth is better. I'll say that. Truss was respectable. Certainly serviceable for us there. And I think that's what we're going to have with Ernest Green. I think we're going to be serviceable, respectable at right tackle, and significantly better at left tackle. If I'm looking at our tackle situation. That's the way I would break that down right now. Now, moving inside, let's go to the center position. Because I know if people have questions about the Georgia offensive line, a lot of times right now they're looking at center. Why? Because there's that name, Bobo, Drew Bobo. And anytime there's some Georgia fans out there, when they hear the name Bobo, like they see red. Doesn't matter who it is. Bobo, what? And so it's like, oh, he's just a Nepo baby. He doesn't deserve that spot. He doesn't deserve to start. I would beg to differ. If you go back and watch him last year, guys, I thought he played pretty well, man. Especially when he was actually playing center. Now there are some situations where he had to play guard some, like against Ole Miss. I didn't love him at guard. I thought he was much better at center. And this is a guy that's been in the system for a long time. As a center, the number one thing we need there is football IQ. You need to be like the captain of that offensive line. You need to be the brains of the offensive line. And a guy that's been in the system, a coach's son like Drew Bobo, is a guy that I feel pretty good about being in that spot. He knows what to do, right? That's not going to be a question. Now, I see light on experience, like actual playing time. Yeah, got some time last year, started the game, but yeah, he's still light on experience. Like, there's no doubt about that. I can't sit here and suggest otherwise. But when he did get playing time last year at center, the position that he will be playing for Georgia this year, I thought the guy looked pretty good. And now he's got a full off season of being the guy at center, getting all those reps in spring with the number one offense, getting all those reps in fall camp here in about a month with the number one offense. I think Drew Bobo is going to be more than serviceable for Georgia. I think he's going to be good for Georgia. Look, he's not going to be as athletic as Jared Wilson was. Jared Wilson is a freak athlete, like just an oddly athletic guy at the center position. But here's one thing I would say about Jared Wilson. I don't mean this as a shot at him. Great athlete. That's what helped him get drafted in the NFL. But the strength point of attack wasn't always there. Like he didn't always get as much movement as I would have liked. I think we might have a center that might be a little stronger at the point of attack than what we had in Jared Wilson. So not as athletic, strength at the point of attack potentially could be a little better there. So I think we're gonna be fine at center, guys. I think we're gonna be absolutely fine there. And then behind Bobo, now we do have some depth issues there. If something happens to Bobo this year on the offensive line, I have some questions. Malachi Tolliver's a guy that's been working with the number 2 offense, 6'5", 320. He's kind of being trained to be that next guy. Cortez Smith, coming out of Portview High School, 6'3", 310. He's young. He's young. Now, I have a question. Like, can Micah Morris, we'll get to here in a minute, can Micah Morris potentially cross-train and play some center for us? I think we have a lot of options at guard, not as many at center. So can we take one of those options at guard and maybe cross him a little bit at center in case of injury? Maybe Micah Morris, a guy that's been in the system for a while. Just put that there in the back of your mind. And that takes us to guard. Speaking of Micah Morris, it looks like Micah will be our starter at left guard. He's going to start at one of the guards. Throughout spring practice, it was really left guard for him. This is a guy that's been in the program for a long time. Another really highly rated guy coming out of high school who's kind of waited his turn. He's played a lot for Georgia, though. Hasn't been a full-time starter, but has played a lot. He is one of the more experienced players on this Georgia offensive line coming into 2025. 6'4", 330, big road grader with good athleticism on the offensive line for Georgia. Has 5 starts in his career. He's got 25 games under his belt where he's played meaningful snaps, like not garbage time. I'm not going back to his freshman year when it's like, oh yeah, he saw duty in like 7 games, like garbage time. No. I'm not what I'm talking about. I'm talking like real, legitimate snaps against real, legitimate opponents. He was basically in a series by series rotation, more or less, with Dylan Fairchild at guard back in 2023. Same thing to open the 2024 season. Then Tay Ratliff goes down with injury, and then Morris slides over to right guard. Then he got banged up. Add him to the list of Georgia offensive linemen who were banged up last year. And he missed the rest of the season, essentially. So he had some injuries last year, but he is one of the more experienced guys who have come back and has started a number of games for Georgia in the past. And I love him. I think he is a true guard. I think he's going to play a really high low for Georgia. So he's another one of the reasons why I think we're going to be good, man. I think we're going to be very good again on the interior of the Georgia offensive line. Behind him, you got a couple of young, talented guys. Obviously, Marquis Easley, gone. He's no longer with the team, which he was a guy I had some high hopes for. Jamar Merriweather's a guy that's been with the program for a while. I always kind of saw him as more of a tackle, and he still plays some tackle kind of cross trace, but he played a fair amount of guard in the spring. 6'7", 305. I kind of saw him with the length he has as more of a tackle, but he's getting some work at guard. Maku Ini is a guy who got a lot of reps for the number 1 offense during the spring when Daniel Calhoun, who we're going to get to in a second at right guard, he went down with an injury. It was Michael Uini who came in and got a lot of reps with the number 1 offense and did a good job. I thought he was really good at G-Day and did some good things, so that was very encouraging. So I think we have some good options there behind Micah Morris. And then speaking of Daniel Calhoun, let's go to right guard. Daniel Calhoun, former Walton County prospect here in the state of Georgia, Walton High School, not Walton County, Walton High School prospect here in the state of Georgia. I love this dude, man. I think this guy has big time potential for Georgia. I was hearing really good things about him coming into last year. I liked what I saw from him at practice at fall camp last year as a true freshman. You could see like he wasn't ready yet, but you could see the talent. Oh yeah, this guy is going to be something. And he stepped in the early part of spring practice, the first half of spring practice, and kind of took over that number 1 right guard position. At 6'6", 325, he's another road grader there at guard. So I think we have 2 dudes that at the point of attack are going to be stronger than the guys that we had a year ago. And look, that's not me slandering Tate Ratliff and Dylan Fairchild. I think both those guys, when healthy, were awesome for Georgia. Tate was probably a better athlete than Daniel Calhoun and Michael Morris. I'll give him that for sure. But I think we have 2 bigger guys. I think potentially stronger at the point of attack. So can George get more movement, which was an issue for us? If you're looking back at our run game issues from a year ago, what was one of the issues? We just weren't getting enough movement up front. Like, I know it's a simplification, but on plenty of plays, like running some duo stuff, we just weren't moving guys off the ball the way that we had in the past. And again, part of that is injuries. When you got guys like Tate Ratliff and Dylan Fairchild who are banged up, they couldn't really anchor and push and drive the way that they normally would. And hopefully that's not going to be as big of an issue there. So I'm excited about Daniel Calhoun. He should be fully ready to go 100% to start fall camp despite the injury at the end of spring camp. Again, behind him, I think you got Michael Uini. Again, he stepped in and was working with the ones quite a bit during the spring. Another guy to keep your eye on here at right guard who had a big spring for a true freshman. I always say, guys, on the offensive line, it's really hard to come in and make an impact right away. Now, guys do it from time to time, sure. Like we've had our fair share. We had Andrew Thomas. Like we've had guys like that come in and start for us. But those guys are, it's much more rare to do the offensive line than some of the other positions because playing in the trenches, you're going against grown men. And sometimes you're just not physically ready as a true freshman. So I'm always very careful about projecting true freshmen on the offensive line to make like immediate impacts and like be ready to play year one. If you get some of them, great. That's awesome. That's gravy. But I don't count on that. And so I kind of had that mindset about Juan Gaston coming into spring practice. I was like, okay, yeah, I know he's a talented guy. He flew up the rankings at the end of the 2025 cycle and had a really big all stars practice session, all that stuff, and he was really gaining some traction very late in the cycle. And so I was excited about him. But again, like you're a true freshman. I don't know what to expect from you. But like almost right away, you were hearing some buzz about Gaston coming out of spring practice. And yeah, when Daniel Calhoun went down with an injury, the back half of spring camp, yeah, and he got a lot of reps in the number one offense, but so was Gaston. He was getting legit reps with the number one offense at right guard. That guy is going to be a legitimately very good football player for Georgia. It's a matter of when, not if for me. And it's also a matter of where. I also think he's a guy, we recruited him ostensibly as a tackle. So him playing guard in the spring was a little surprising for me, but I think that was more of a necessity. It's like, okay, well, I think we feel good about who we have at tackle right now. And when you have a guy like Daniel Calhoun go down with an injury, there might be a quicker path to potential playing time for Gasson if he's playing guard. So I think he's a guy that can play either for us. But if he continues his development and continues to develop at the same rate as we saw throughout the course of spring practice, once we get into fall camp, just don't forget about Juan Gasson. He might be a guy with an injury here or there that could potentially factor into things for Georgia this year. So look, I know to wrap this up, when you lose guys like Tate Ratledge and Dylan Fairchild on the offensive line, it's hard to sit here and say, oh, yeah, guys, like you lose a second round pick who might start for the Lions this year. You lose Dylan Fairchild who might start for the Bengals this year. You lose a really athletic center, Jared Wilson. It's hard to say with a straight face, oh, don't worry, we're going to be better on the offensive line in 2025. I know that's like the ultimate homer thing to say, and I'm sure a lot of you are sitting there thinking that in your head right now. This dude's just a homer. But again, I go back to what I said earlier in the show. When you're looking at the Georgia offensive line in 2024, you have to factor in how banged up those guys were. Did we have Tate Ratledge at 100% last year? No, not after week 3, not even close to it. Dylan Fairchild wasn't 100% for at least half the year. I don't know if Jared Wilson was ever 100%. He was banged up during fall camp and didn't start the first game. Missed that game, right? Ernest Green went over. Like, I don't know if any of those guys were 100% to even start the season. So you have to factor that in. They were nowhere near 100%, and it showed on tape. They gave everything they had, but they just weren't right. And they weren't as effective as they needed to be as a result. So when I'm looking at the offensive line this year, I believe that we will be better at tackle. Why? Same thing as I said earlier. We've got a true left tackle. We didn't have that last year. I know Freeland, the guy I'm counting on this year, played some there at the end of last year, but he was banged up. He's a true left tackle, should be healthy, fully good to go, got the labrum dealt with during the offseason, should be good to go. I think we'd be better at left tackle. I feel very confident about that. Right tackle, I think at the very least it's a wash. I see Truss and Green both as guards, so maybe it's a little wash there. But if he doesn't pan out, if he can get the job done, I think again we're more equipped to have guys step up and push him and take over that job and play at a high level for us. I think we're gonna be better at tackle, and if we can stay healthy at guard, I think we're going to be just as good as we were on the interior last year when you factor in the guys that we were playing with were banged up. So, yeah, I think this offensive line for Georgia in 2025 can absolutely surprise a lot of people with how they played this season and will be much improved from what we saw from the Georgia offensive line a year ago. So, if the offensive line questions are a big reason why you were down on Georgia entering the 2025 season, I would just say be careful there. Be careful. Be careful. You might just be in for a little bit of a rude awakening come September. But all right, guys, thank you so much for being here. I greatly appreciate each and every one of you for checking out today's show. Again, if you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe right now. If you're into die-hard content, this is the channel for you. We produce this content for people like you. So check it out. Keep coming back for more. Subscribe, like, comment, turn the notifications on, all that stuff. Greatly appreciate each and every one of you. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs.
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.